Welcome in, Shield Brothers and Shield Maidens, to Shield's Rest. I'm True, and today I'm joined by Frey as we continue on our series of optimizing classes within Daggerheart. Today we are talking about the Druid and all of our picks, so let's get into it. Alright, so today, like I said, we are getting into the Druid optimization, and I'm so excited for this because I feel like we've really found it here. It's way too good. Druid is just too good. It fits in a lot of different positions and roles, and you can do so much with the Sage and the Arcane Domain deck, as you will see. It is wild. But much like the Bard build, we are going to do this in tiers of play rather than level by level, so that way you get the bulk of what we're trying to do instead of going step by step and getting too meticulous and in the weeds with this. So obviously you're going to see some things where you can change it up as you see fit, but this is about as optimized can get for this Druid. So that's what we're going to get into, and today I took the Warden of Renewal. Frey took the Warden of the Elements, so that's going to be how everything divvies out. And our class feature, first off, the Hope feature, is going to be where you basically can spend 3 stress to shift into the beast form without spending a stress to do so. And when you do so, you can take a +1 to whatever trait you want to. And that is permanent until you drop out of that beast form. Gotta love that, especially when you can shift for free without having to spend that stress, because let's face it, there's going to be some solid stress expenditures in this build. So gotta save that stress as much as you can. The actual features, however, you're going to have 2 of them. First one being Wild Touch, where you can do basically Druid shaping, where you can kind of make something grow really quickly or start a campfire, that kind of thing. Nothing groundbreaking, just minor little magical effects. And then the hallmark for a Druid is going to be that beast form. This is where you can spend a stress to essentially shift into whatever form you feel you want to get into. And it's based off of the tier that you are at. And it allows you, so if you're at tier 2, it allows you to get into tier 1 and tier 2 beast forms. However, you can't access that tier 3 quite yet until you reach tier 3. And it allows you to build as you go. We do actually have a transformation video on the channel, so if you're interested in transformations and want more of a deep dive into that, go check that out. Alright, so Frey, go ahead and start us off with your outlook for this character and what your tier 1 picks were.
For sure. So for this Druid, I am going to be focusing more on evasion than anything. That's going to be my priority. How high can I get my evasion with this build? So anything that boosts that, that's going to be a priority. I'm also going to try and affect adversary stress. So while taking down their health is important, taking out their stress is actually very useful, as that is how they activate a lot of their abilities. So anytime I have an option to do that, I'm going to pick it up as well. Then we're going to go for some damage control, because eventually I will get hit no matter how high my evasion gets. So anything that I can do to help kind of lower that damage or heal it back up. And then when all else fails, damaging them, pumping up some numbers onto them as well when all else fails. So with that being said, for tier 1, like he said, I'll be doing the Warden of the Elements. My primary element is going to be air, but I'll go ahead and read off all the options you have for it. So with the Foundation feature, you have Elemental Incarnation, when you can mark a stress to channel one of the following elements until you take severe damage or until you rest. For fire, this is going to allow you to retaliate with a 1d10 of magic damage to any adversary that deals damage to you in melee range. With earth, you could gain a bonus to your damage threshold equal to your proficiency. With water, whenever you deal damage to an adversary within melee range, all adversaries within very close range mark a stress. And then, like I said, with air is what I'm taking. You can hover, and you can also gain advantage on all agility rolls. So that is any agility roll, including attacks. Very important. So air, like I said, is going to be my primary at this tier just for the agility roll aspect of it. And then water is going to be my backup because, like I said, I want to affect adversary stress. However, since it's the adjacent targets, that may not always be the case. Air is going to be my primary unless I'm fighting a group of enemies that are kind of bunched up there. Then my heritage, for Ancestry, I'm going to do Human and Simia as a mixed Ancestry. From Human, I am picking up an extra stress slot, so I get to start with 7 instead of 6, because it's a very, very stress-heavy build. As you heard from the Beast form, every time we go into that, we're going to have to spend a stress, so very important, as well as with our Foundation feature here, spinning a stress, so stress very important. And then with Simia, I'm getting a +1 to my evasion right off the bat. And then for Community, I went with Wildborn, very thematic. It's also kind of sneaky, stealthy, kind of plays into the evasion aspect a little bit. So that is what I went with for my community. For traits, I am going to start with a +2 in instinct, +1 in agility, a +1 in finesse, 0 in strength, 0 in presence, and -1 in knowledge. I was kind of back and forth on the finesse and strength. I think when building this out, I could have gone either way, but some of the forms I wanted to use later on use finesse, so that's why I just put my +1 there. Then before I get into kind of like the domains and all that, important to note on here, since I'm going for the evasion, what I have right now currently is a 13 in evasion. So I start with 10 with Druid. I got an extra 1 from, sorry, I have a 12. We'll get to the 13 in a second. 1 from the Gambeson armor that I'm going to use, and 1 from the Simia. So I have a 12 by default. And then HP 6, stress 7, and my thresholds are just 6 and 12. Won't be raising those too much, but just to show you kind of how I am survivability wise. Like I said, for equipment, I will have the Gambeson, and that is specifically to give me that +1 to evasion. I'll have that throughout the whole build. And then for my domains, first up, I'm going to pick up Rune Ward. That's Arcane 1. And with Rune Ward, I basically have a kind of a personal artifact that I can give to an ally or keep on myself. Whenever we take damage or get hit, we can spend a hope, roll a 1d8, and that's how much we reduce that damage by. If you roll an 8, you still reduce the damage. However, the ward will break at that point, and you will have to basically cast it again to get that back at your next rest or to recharge it. And then I'm also going to pick up Gifted Tracker from Sage 1. With Gifted Tracker, this allows us to, if we are tracking a certain enemy type or creature type or a specific individual, and we see signs of them being there, we can ask the GM various questions about it, like where are they going, what were they doing here, things like that. But most importantly, when we are engaged with that enemy that we have now tracked, we get a +1 to our evasion with them, and that will bring me up to a 13 evasion in that scenario. So it is a specific scenario, but I think common enough to where I will be counting it throughout this build. And then finally, my beast forms. My primary is going to be the Nimble Grazer. Now, it has some effects on it. Primarily, I'm taking this for the +3 evasion that it has, as well as as a reaction to being attacked, rolling a d4 to add that to my evasion as well. So I can get all the way up to a 20 evasion at this point if I roll max on that die. So not bad, I think, for tier 1, level 1, up to 20 evasion. Pretty cool.
Damn.
And secondary, just the stalking arachnid, spiders, be creepy, shoot some webs, strain them up. But that is what my tier 1 looks like.
All right, so for my outlook in tier 1, for the Warden of Renewal, this one is definitely going to be the one that fills a lot of different gaps. It heals, it clears stress, it primarily is going to do a good amount of damage. It's going to mess with the battlefield in different ways. And it's also going to be focused on empowering my own self, so that way I can deal out a lot more damage. It's going to hit a lot of different areas, but it primarily is going to be focused in on the healing. But there's a lot of ways in which we can do this and still hit them with the damage, hit them with different field effects, and that's exactly what we want. That's exactly what we're going to get into. So for my tier 1, particularly for my Ancestries, I did go Seaborn. Felt like I had to go Seaborn, because it's the only way to make my combo Ancestry make sense. So Seaborn, though, we all love Seaborn, especially as a caster. You're gonna just want Seaborn, because this is going to give you those +1s to your rolls whenever you want to, as long as you're obviously rolling with Fear, which is pretty much half the time. So you're going to build up on this. Obviously, it will be to your level, so at level 1, you're only going to have 1 token on it, but once you get to level 10, that's 10 tokens that are possible on Seaborn. So, but I did go Galapa first and then Simia second. So Galapa gives me Shell, which is going to essentially allow us to pump in our proficiency into our damage thresholds. Can't say no to that. It just gives us a little bit more protection in this aspect. Not by a lot, mind you, it's not groundbreaking, but it gives us enough so while we're in this kind of close range situation, we're going to be able to deal with a little bit more damage and hopefully mitigate it down to minor, if not completely mitigate it to nothing. That should help us. And then Simia is going to give us that +1 to evasion that we so desperately want. And especially with us starting out at 10, that brings us to 11. And then, much like Frey did, I took the Gambeson armor, which gives me another +1, so 12 for evasion. Then getting into the Warden of Renewal, this is going to be our bread and butter for the class, because the entire point of this is obviously to do some healing, and that's kind of what is going to give us our healing right off the bat. Unfortunately, there are no spells in the first level to give you any sort of healing. It's going to be primarily this domain card, or sorry, rather this subclass card. And obviously, with Instinct being our main trait for spellcasting, we wanted to make sure that we had a +2 in our Instinct. I did take a +1 to agility, a -1 to strength, 0 in finesse, 0 presence, and then 1 to knowledge, just to kind of help round that all out properly for us, because we want to focus in on agility and on instinct. So that'll be our main thing there. But with Warden of Renewal, this allows me to, once per long rest for clarity of nature, I can basically create a space that is kind of like calming and nice, and it's more of an out of combat sort of situation. Allows me to clear a number of stress equal to my instinct. And then I can distribute amongst my allies however I see fit. So this is a nice downtime move to be able to use. And then getting into regeneration, I can touch a creature and spend 2 hope, and then they get to clear 1d4 hit points. So love that. It gets better as you go, especially with the specialization. But then I took Vicious Entanglement. Vicious Entangle is really good just for being able to bog down those adversaries and doing a little bit of damage while you're at it. But being able to restrain them, you cannot go wrong with that. Especially if it just hinders them, even for a moment. That's at least something better than nothing. And it keeps them out of the fight, especially if you're trying to stop somebody from entering the actual melee combat that might be going on with the rest of your party. The other one is going to be Unleash Chaos. Basically, you can put a number of tokens on here equal to your spellcast modifier, and then you can use a number of those to essentially channel a bunch of D10s into somebody as you see fit, just by making that spellcast roll. And then you can mark a stress to replenish that. So we can keep that going if we need to, which we most likely will need to. And so I can keep just throwing D10s at them, especially 2 D10s every single time, and keep that damage sustained all the way through as long as I have the stress to utilize. But at level 1, you're probably going to have at least a good amount of stress to utilize before all those expenditures stack up on you. So that is my tier 1. Frey, what's your tier 2 looking like, man?
All right, so first let's spend our level up options. First at level 2, I'm going to increase my traits. I'm going to take instinct up to 3, and I'm going to be bringing agility along with me for this build. So agility up to 2, and then I'm also going to increase my evasion, of course. The next level up, I'm going to give myself 2 extra stress slots, and then the final level up for this tier, 2 extra health slots. That's going to bring me up to a 13 base evasion, 14 with gifted tracker, and we'll get into the beast forms here in a second for some more evasion. But stress at 9, health at 8. And then for my domains, first up, I'm going to pick up Conjure Swarm at level 2. This is going to allow us to mark a stress and conjure up some armor beetles that will encircle you. They are going to reduce the severity of the next damage by 1 threshold, and then you may spend a hope to keep the beetles conjured after taking that damage. This will be my pre-fight kind of ability. You cannot cast spells while you're in beast form, however, spells do endure while you're in beast form. So I will pop this, swap into my beast form, and then every time I get hit, kind of will be a GM decision, I think, whether you can spend that hope to maintain the spell. Hopefully I would be able to, but if not, at least that first hit, I will get to kind of reduce the severity down of my first attack. You also get to have the Fireflies. It lets you do a little bit of damage by spending a hope, but primarily taking it for that damage absorption there. Level 3, I'm going to pick up Counter Spell. That is from the Arcane domain. This just allows us to, whenever we see an active effect starting or anything like that, snap that out of place, get rid of it, and then toss this back into our vault immediately, and we can pull it back out later on. And then finally, I will pick up Death Grip at level 4. This one does a couple of things. What I am primarily taking it for is against a target at close range, I get to choose the option to constrict the target and force them to mark 2 stress as long as the spellcast roll is successful. So with this one, kind of playing it by ear, but primarily if I'm not going to be in beast form, I'm going to be trying to spam Death Grip on everything that I can, trying to burn through as much stress as I can until I become a target, and then get out of dodge, pop into a form, and bounce. So that is my domain kind of set up there. And then for my beast forms, primarily I'm going to be taking Pouncing Predator. Now I don't get to capitalize on the agility advantage that the previous form I was using has. Whenever they attack with agility, when I'm using air, I get to have advantage on all those attack rolls. This one I have to jump to instinct, but this does bring my evasion up to 17. So a little lower than my max at level 1. However, 17 is a constant, and I won't have to worry about trying to roll to it. So a very nice 17 evasion at tier 2 I think is awesome. And then my backups are going to be the Mighty Strider. I'm going to use this when I want to utilize my agility advantage. And then if I want to do a little bit of AoE, we have a lot of targets around, I'm going to swap on over to the Striking Serpent that allows us to attack any targets that are in a very close range to us. So that is what my tier 2 looks like. How about you?
Dude, I love that. I'm pretty much going to run with you throwing out the forms at this point because really and truly the forms are not as important for my build, but still, those are options, and they're definite options, especially when you want to get the hell out of there. Those will be my kind of go-tos as well. But for my tier 2, really and truly, we're getting into, obviously, proficiency 2. My evasion goes up to a plus 12 because I do take the evasion increase, as well as 2 hit points and then 2 stress slots here. So I get a nice 8 and 8 for my stress and my hit points. My traits also increase to plus 3 for my instinct and a plus 2 now for my agility. And then that's when we start getting into the really cool things, which are the domain cards. I love Sage Domain. I'm just going to put that out there. I love Sage Domain a little too much at this point.
Love it too.
It's so good. And because I love the variety that you get within it by comparison to all the other domains, because there's so many different ways that they bring in like protection and damage and just the way that they go about all this stuff, and even a lot of more exploration and social. Absolutely love it. So starting off with the level 2 pick, Conjure Swarm, an absolute must, because not only do you get to protect yourself, because with those beetles, let's say we reduce that down, I still have armor to reduce it even further. That's the best part about that. And then the Fireflies, I can hit, so anybody within close range. I make a spellcast roll against anyone within close range, which means I spend that hope to deal that 2d8 plus 3 to every single one of them, which I can see there being a GM that might disagree with the way that this thing is worded, but the way I read it, spend a hope to deal the 2d8 plus 3 magic damage to targets you succeeded against. Not a hope per, because they have a lot of cards where they do state mark per, whether it's stress or hope, mark per adversary that you succeed against. Disintegration Wave is a prime example of what I mean by that. So, had to take that. And then Corrosive Projectile. Absolutely love this one. This is one that is so good, not only at dealing damage, because I love that it also updates with your proficiency, because it's D6 plus 4, and it's going to be the amount equal to your proficiency. And then you can mark 2 stress, and even more stress, and for every 2 that you mark, you can bring them down in their difficulty for every 1. For every 2 stress that you spend, you can basically knock them down by 1 for every 2 that you spend. Love that to death. That's a great way to get rid of a lot of stress. If you really just felt like pouring a bunch of stress into that one spell, you totally could. And now they're that much easier to hit, and you do a fair amount of damage, if I do say so myself. But that is a permanent situation. Can't say no to that. And then, finally, the first healing domain deck card, Healing Field. At level 4, mind you. Took us to level 4 to finally have a good healing spell, the only healing spell. But I can basically, once per long rest, conjure this, little area that heals all my allies, and basically they clear 1 hit point. Or I can spend 2 hope to allow you and all your allies to clear 2 hit points instead. So, love that to death. I think those are some great picks for a Warden of Renewal. I think that's about as good as you can get with the options that you do have between Arcane and Sage. But yeah, cannot go wrong. This is pretty much the start, and it gets you set up in a great way. With this loadout, it gets you set up. And it's stuff that you're going to be using quite a bit, actually. But as we get it here in the Tier 3, we'll start going through what our loadout and vault is and what the plan is for those cards. So, Frey, for you, Tier 3, what does that look like?
All right, so starting off, again, increase in traits, as always, for Instinct to 4, Agility to 3. And then we are going to pick up the specialization feature, the subclass upgrade. I'll read that off for you. So this is Elemental Aura. Once per rest while channeling, you can assume an aura matching your element. This aura affects targets in close range until the channeling ends. For fire, when an adversary marks 1 or more hit points, they also mark a stress. So good backup option. That is going to be my backup. We'll get to my main in a second. For earth, the allies gain a +1 bonus to strength. So if you're running around with a lot of strength-based allies, good thing to consider. Water, when an adversary deals damage to you, you can mark a stress to move them within very close range of where they are. So you can try and push them away from you a little bit, bring them closer maybe, if they're not quite where you want them to be. And then for air, which is what will be our primary again, when you or an ally takes damage from an attack beyond melee range, we can reduce the damage by 1d8. So we have a lot of melee protection right now, and this is going to give us a little bit of range protection as well. Then we are going to, at the next level up, increase stress by 1 and increase my evasion. And then at level 7, increase stress again and increase HP by 1. So to recap on all that, we're at a base of 14 evasion now, 15 with gifted tracker, and then we'll get into the forms evasion in a bit. Stress at 11, health is at 9. And then for our domain, first I'm going to pick up Thorn Skin. So once per rest, we can spend a hope to sprout thorns all over our bodies. When we do, place a number of tokens equal to our spellcast rate. So at this point is 4. Whenever we get hit, we roll that many d6s, add the results together, and we reduce the incoming damage by that amount. And if they're in melee, we deal that much damage back to them as well. So potentially reducing damage all the way down, depending on how hard they're hitting us, but good way to just increase our survivability a bit, do a little bit of damage as well if we are getting hit, because the goal is to not get hit, but when we do hit, we're at least punching back. Next up, we are going to pick up a Forager. So with Forager, we get an additional downtime move option. With this, we get to roll the d6, kind of work with your G-Man on what the actual item is, but we can gain certain items to list some of them off. One of them will clear 2 stress. One of them will gain 2 hope for you, add +2 to the spellcast roll. The stress, and you can clear 2 HP as well. Those are going to be the 2 main ones we use here. You can hold up to 5 of them, so every rest I would just try and cap this out and always keep that pack of 5 ready to go. And then last up, we are going to pick up Rift Walker from Arcane. This allows us to cast a spell, kind of makes like a glyph on the ground, so to speak, and then the next time you successfully cast the spell, you create a kind of portal opens up between those 2 spots. Get into why I use that here in a second, but before I go into the loadout, I'm also going to swap Rune Ward over to Nature's Tongue. I think at this point, between Thorn Skin and Forager and things like that in my beast forms, I don't really need Rune Ward as much, so to speak, so I'm going to pick up Nature's Tongue to allow us to have a little bit of social interactions with the plants and animals around us, just a little bit of utility there. All right, and then for my loadout, I'm going to carry Gifted Tracker on me at all times. I'll have Death Grip still. I'm going to bring in Thorn Skin, keep Conjure Swarm, and keep Counterspell. For my Vault, that's going to be Nature's Tongue. That one's going to be, more situational. Like if I'm in town, I'm not going to have Nature's Tongue or anything like that. The beauty of it is that it has a recall of 0. Our Gifted Tracker also has a recall of 0. So for any of those where there's 0, I just want to bring them in real quick, I'm just going to swap those back and forth as needed to make that a little bit easier on me. The Forager is also going to be in the Vault, mainly because I'll have it get up to my 5 items and then leave that in the Vault, and then anytime we use them, I'll bring it back in, do my rest, try and get back up to 5, and then throw them back in the Vault. And then finally for Riftwalker is going to be in the Vault. Again, more situational. This one I kind of picked up for kind of travel purposes, more so to get over those kind of difficult situations for the whole party, because my understanding of the rule is that opens a portal, everyone should be able to use it. If I'm wrong, I would change this out. But what my kind of example was to say there's a valley we have to cross, this big old canyon. Instead of us having to travel all down, up, and through it, pop a Riftwalker, go into a flying beast form, fly across, get over there, cast the spell again. Now we have a rift, whole party can go through, and we are on our way. So that is the vault set up for my guy here. And then as far as my beast forms go, my primary is going to be Legendary Beast. So Legendary Beast lets you take a tier 1 creature or tier 1 beast form and enhance it a bit. So it is going to take us up to increase our damage. It's going to increase our agility more. It is an agility-based thing, but it's also going to allow us to bring the total evasion score up to a +5. So with this, when I'm in this form, my evasion sits at a 20. I also can get up to 24 because I still have that elusive prey ability where I could spend a stress as a reaction to roll a d4. So up to 24. Not bad at all. My backup is going to be Aquatic Predator. Again, depending on your GM, maybe limited on this. It does specifically list off animals that you would typically see in water, but we are in a fantasy setting, so maybe you can go for more of like, a land a turtle, right, or a tortoise, whichever one, can come up on land. Going for something like that. But if you can use it, that's going to give us a default of 19, and it does not give us that fragile feature that the Nimble Grazer has. So that one actually makes us drop our form when we get hit by major damage instead of just severe. So if you don't want to deal with that, try and use up the Aquatic Predator. And then you could also do Legendary Hybrid. This one allows us to pick and choose creatures from tier 1 and tier 2 to mesh together. With this one, I would pick up Elusive Prey, which is that D4 roll, and then Armored Shell. This does have a shell ability that lets you kind of pull into your shell, but what I would be taking it for is it actually gives you resistance to all physical damage. So between that, the Elusive Prey buff, which you now don't have the fragile kind of feature paired with that, our evasion sits at 18. Elusive Prey would get us up to 22 evasion, and then we're also taking half damage during this time. So very survivable. Very much love that. I would Legendary Beast and Legendary Hybrid kind of depend on the moment which one I would use, but I think it wouldn't go wrong either way. And that is my tier 3.
Dude, that is awesome. Yeah, no, this is why I love the beast forms. Like, it is too good to not get more into and to be leveraging like you are currently trying to leverage them. So yeah, absolutely love these beast forms. Yeah, so for my tier 3, I ended up getting into +4 proficiency instead of the customary +3. So now I'm able to do just a little bit more damage, more consistent damage output, hopefully getting more into the severe side of things rather than just major. This is going to help us do that a little bit. I also increase my my instinct and my agility to 4 and 3, and then +1 stress, so that way we go to 9 stress, 8 hit points still. I haven't increased my hit points in this tier. I did take the evasion increase because I feel like that's a necessary thing to have, so we're at a +14 now. And then, of course, I take the specialization at level 5. And so the specialization for Warden of Renewal ends up being where you can now use your regeneration ability, feature that comes from the foundation. You can do that within very close rather than having to touch them. It's the only change for that one. And then when you get into Warden's Protection, once per long rest, spend 2 hope to clear 2 hit points on 1d4 allies within close range. That's really nice to have. I do like how the specialization and the foundation are building on each other. We're starting to see this come to fruition a little bit more as a healer. They're by no means the best healer. Let me just put this out there right now. I should have said it a lot sooner, but the Druid is not going to be the best healer in the game, but they can do so much between the healing, between the damage output, between the beast forms, so much that they can do. So they may not be the best of the best, but they are incredibly good at what they do. So for my domain card picks, I did also take Thornskin for the exact same reasons. It's so good. You have to just throw that sucker up so you can start dealing damage to somebody who's dealing damage to you. Can't say no to that. However, it does not go into my loadout immediately. It is one of those things that I like to kind of keep in the back, and then we'll start hot swapping that sucker in because it is only 1 stress to swap in when you need to. Same goes for Forager. I also took Forager. Again, it's a great downtime move. It just gives you so much more to work with for your downtime actions. And let's face it, all of those picks are good picks. So rolling a d6, it doesn't matter what that number is going to be. It's going to be a good thing for you. So that's what I like about Forager. It also gives you a fun little social thing to kind of do, a little bit of RP that you get to get into with Forager, especially with your GM in terms of what you find. Love that. At level 7, though, I have found that I've been getting away from taking the domain touch cards, mainly because I find that they're eating up one of my slots and they're not as good as I want them to be. Whereas Wild Surge was my pick instead of taking Sage Touch. Because Wild Surge gives me this ability to add in. So basically I throw a dice down on here for once per long rest. Mind you, once per long rest. This is another stress that's going to eat this thing up. But I can put a d6 on here, start it at value 1, and then as I take actions, that value increases all the way to 6. You're essentially going to add that to your rolls. Whatever the value is that's showing, you add that to your roll. So you're gaining this increase as you go. And then when this finally exceeds 6, you mark an additional stress. As much as that bit sucks, it's really not that bad when you think about the amount of stress that we are playing with here at tier 3 to gain those increases in combination with Seaborn. I'm just saying, there's a lot that we are going to build on with these pluses. You're not going to miss. There's no way you're missing with all these +1 increases that we're going to get or whatever that die value is at. you're not going to miss these attacks. So that is one thing that we're loving right now. So for my loadout, I'm taking Unleash Chaos, Healing Field, Corrosive Projectile, Conjure Swarm, and Wild Surge. I basically remove Vicious Entangle and keep Wild Surge in there because I find that is so much better. So when that does go away, I can hot swap Wild Surge out for something else entirely. But that's my tier 3. So, Frey, what did you end up doing at tier 4? How did you become the best druid on Earth, huh?
It's going to get good. Okay. So let's get the easy ones out the way, right? Increase traits, instincts 5, agility 4. I'm going to increase stress, increase evasion. I am going to take my first proficiency bump. So just the one extra on top of the norm. And that was just because I didn't really need more HP at this point. I think I'm like, I should be hopefully not getting hit as much anyways. So took some proficiency, just get a little bit more damage when I do have to do that, even though that's not the focus of the build. And then I also took my mastery feature. For this, it is the Elemental Dominion. So we further embody our element. For fire, you get to gain a +1 bonus to your proficiency for attacks and spells that deal damage. So again, with the proficiency I picked up, I can pump out a little bit of damage if I want to. With earth, you can, if you were going to mark a hit point, roll a d6. For each result of 6, you would reduce the number of hit points you mark by 1. So if you get 2 hit points marked, you roll 2d6. If they both roll 6, you don't mark anything. So that is really cool. With water, when an attack against you succeeds, you can mark a stress to make them temporarily vulnerable. So a little bit of revenge action there. And then with air that I have been picking as my primary the whole time, this is going to gain us not only the ability to fly, which is great, so we don't have to worry about that with our beast form having to be the flying thing. We can fly all the time now, no matter what form we're in. We also get to gain a +1 bonus to our evasion. So just to show you where we're at by default, remember we started with a 10 base. CMEO took us to 11. Our armor took us to 12. All our level up increases has taken us to 15. Air has now given us a 16. And if we are fighting our tracked target, we are at 17 before we even touch a beast form. Now we'll get into some fun math with the beast form at the end, but stress is at 12, health is at 9. So we're in a good spot with stress is maxed out, health is still pretty good up there. All right, and then the domains that we picked up. First at level 8, I am going to pick up Rejuvenation Barrier. So once per rest, on a successful spellcast roll of 15, we can create a temporary barrier that surrounds us in a very close range. In this, us and all our allies can clear a 1d4 hit points when we have it, and then while the barrier is up, us and our allies have resistance to all physical damage from outside of the barrier. So that ability we had just from the form temporarily, now we can just have that for not only us but our allies around, and it's for anything in that area. So really great, love it. Even more survivability. That's the point of the goal of the build here, is to survive. So when we get hit, we don't even take as much damage. Right. Then at level 9, we're going to pick up our first primary damage dealing domain card. This is Earthquake. So we do our spellcast roll. Anyone who is not flying takes a reaction. If they fail, they're going to take 3d8 plus 8 physical damage, and they become vulnerable. If you succeed, they take half, but we also get to make everything in a very far range difficult terrain. So this can be a good kind of get out of dodge thing as well. Like if we see a bunch of enemies coming at us and we need to haul it, sure, you get earthquake and damage, but you're also going to make it difficult terrain for them. Hopefully someone in the party makes it so it's not difficult terrain for you, or there are some domain cards you could have picked up along the way if you want to be a little different, but I just love that ability to just completely change the battlefield and try and tip it in our favor just depending on what's going on. So primarily took it for the difficult terrain, but a little bit of damage doesn't hurt either. And then finally at level 10, I went with Tempest. So Tempest is going to allow us to summon some really great weather options that will affect targets all the way up to a far range. So we could summon a blizzard. It's going to do 2d20 plus 8 damage and make all the targets vulnerable. You could do hurricane, which is 3d10 plus 10, and that is going to let you choose a direction the wind is blowing, and targets cannot move against the wind. So this, coupled with earthquake, if you want to burn through some stress and do it all at once, can completely negate targets entirely depending on how you play it out. And then what I will primarily be using is Sandstorm. This is going to make attacks made from beyond melee range have disadvantage. So I have a lot of options to not only not get hit, but I'm reducing damage, making them attack with disadvantage. and really just building it up in our favor, right? I'm setting it up for primarily myself, but a lot of these, as you get up higher in level, are going to affect your allies as well, so you're only helping them out in the long run. And then I will additionally, at some point during the level up here, I'm going to actually swap Thornskin out. I think at this point I have a lot of damage. I have a lot of physical resistance. I have a lot of disadvantage going out to our adversary, so I'm going to take Thornskin out, and I'm actually going to swap it over to Floating Eye, and that is just going to be my kind of dungeon exploration ability, right? If you're in a kind of sketchy situation, you're exploring something you don't know, have that Floating Eye, summon it out, peek around corners. That way it can eat the traps and not you, and it can see if there's any enemies around the corner that are trying to ambush you. So nice little bit of utility to have there. All right, and then going into the loadout, I am going to keep Gifted Tracker as always, and keep Conjure Swarm and Counterspell, but I'm going to be bringing in Tempest and Rejuvenation Barrier. Like I said, Riftwalker's still in there, Forager's still in there, Nature's Tongue is still in there, and then we're going to keep Floating Eye in the vault just because I don't necessarily always need it. Like I said, this is more so for exploration. Moved Death Grip into the vault, and I'm just going to pull that out if I'm in a situation where I don't really want to use or need to use Beast Form. I'll bring Death Grip in and just start spamming that. And then Earthquake, I'm going to save this, like I said, for big battles or big battlefield manipulation and things like that. So I won't always carry it. That is going to be my kind of in my back pocket when I need something big. It's a recall too, so it is kind of expensive, but hopefully I realized early in the fight that I need it and I can whip that up. For my beast forms, primarily I'm going to use Mythic Beast. This is another of the upgrade forms. With this, I'm going to upgrade the Pouncing Predator. This is going to allow me to bring my evasion all the way up to a 23 when I am in the Pouncing Predator form. Very nice.
Damn.
A little bit of math behind why that is so great. I took the plus attack bonuses of all the enemies in the book at tier 4, added them all together, averaged it out. On average, they are going to have a +6 to attack. That means they need to roll a 17 just to hit me. I think that's pretty cool. Some of them have up to a +10 to attack, so in this form, they would still need a 13 to hit me, which little easier to hit, but that's still higher than what an average d20 dice roll is. So I am very elusive, and even if they are hitting me, if I've set myself up right, I am taking half damage, and I have a couple of ability to let myself heal. So I'm always going to try and be in the Mythic Beast form. It's expensive. I believe it costs two an additional stress, so 2 stress just to go into it, but completely worth it. My backup is going to be, of course, the Epic Aquatic Beast, so still that water form, but it just comes with a good bit of evasion as well, just not nearly as much. But that is where I round this druid out with 23 evasion in the heat of battle, taking half damage, having disadvantage on attacks outside of melee range. I mean, doing pretty good, I think.
It's okay, I guess. Dude, that is awesome. That is wild. I had not done the math to that degree, but I also haven't exactly done an evasion build, so that is insane to do. I thought the Ranger was the best one for evasion builds, but that takes the cake. Gosh dang it. Okay, well.
Yeah, I think Ranger I could pump it higher, but I don't know if I'm getting half damage, which I'll take the lower evasion just to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at that point, it doesn't even matter because now you're just working on a little bit of the hit points that you already have, and more often than not, it's only going to be 1 hit point that you're taking at the worst, probably, with the ability to, what is it, the beetles and the armor on top. You're probably only taking 1, if that, sometimes, depending on how hard they hit. For me, for tier 4, this is where it gets ungodly. Although you're ungodly in your evasion, I'm ungodly in the damage that I can do and also the amount of healing that I can do. So first off, let's get the mundane out of the way. I go to proficiency 5 now. My hit points are still 8. That hasn't changed. I do increase my stress by 2, so that way I'm at an 11 for my stress. And then my evasion goes up 1 more, so we're at a 15 by the end of this. So can't say no to that. My instinct goes to 5, and my agility goes to 4. So had to do that. Obviously, we're taking our mastery, kind of have to. And this is actually where the beast forms are going to come into play for the Warden of Renewal. Before, they're not as advantageous as, like, for the Warden of the Elements. For the Warden of Renewal, it doesn't get good until they hit their mastery for this, and it's because of Defender. So, your animal transformations embodies a healing guardian spirit. When you're in beast form and an ally within close range marks 2 or more hit points, you can mark a stress to reduce the number of hit points they mark by 1. That is fantastic. This is one way that you can go about it, especially if you have a character like Frey running around the field, and then there you are with this build. You're going to be able to reduce down all that for him, so if he does get hit, it's not going to be by much at all. It's not going to be anywhere near as bad as it could have been, especially with the beetles on top, especially with the armor. Cannot say no to that. So absolutely love that. But getting into the domain cards, this is where I'd pick up an extra domain card. That's why there's one option missing that I did not take, because I took an extra domain card. So first off, level 8, I took Rejuvenation Barrier, exact same reason. But I also take Frey of the Wilds. Frey of the Wilds is another one that's going to give me a shiza-ton of +1s to work with. So essentially, I can have, once per long rest, mind you, I can place a number of tokens equal to the number of Sage Domain deck cards in my vault and in my loadout. And, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be 10 for me. Okay, 10 cards, meaning 10 +1s are possible. Plus the Seaborn being 10 at level 10. Plus, Wild Surge? Tell me I'm going to miss. Tell me. Try me. Okay? I don't care what adversary you bring. I'm not missing crap. Yeah. It doesn't matter how bad my roll is. I'm hitting that, no matter what. I'd love to see a GM try me on this one. So, yeah. Absolutely love Frey of the Wilds. It is a fantastic card. And basically worth having in your loadout. I'm just saying, it is definitely worth it, because then when it's done and you hot swap that sucker out, you keep on moving. You're still doing well. So for level 10, I end up taking Tempest as well. Tempest is just too good. Same reasons. I just want to be able to deal that damage like no other, and that's how we're hitting right there. That is how we're hitting, is with Frey of the Wilds, with Seaborn, with Wild Surge. No Tempest is missing nothing. So that's the big part. And then the extra card that I took, and this is mainly for almost the same reason that you took Earthquake, but in a different way, and not a damaging sort of way, and that's going to be Plant Domain. It's just such a great exploration one. It's a great way to kind of shield the party from sight, when you're camping out and you just want to get that alcove situated. You want to get a number of trees situated, you can do that. If you want to clear a forest out, you want to clear a path through the forest, go for it. That's what you're using right there. So this is going to be your main mode of transport to kind of make that happen. And let's face it, for only a spellcast roll of, 18? Like, that ain't going to be that bad at all, because I've got +1s for days to be able to make that happen. So, yeah. Now, you can do that only once per long rest, but again, it's really going to be circumstantial. But you're probably only going to use it for one day. Like, you're not going to be trying to use it more than that. So, it's kind of nice to have, and obviously that is sitting in the vault. Just going to put that out there now. But my end loadout is Conjure Swarm, Corrosive Projectile, Tempest, Healing Field, and Frey of the Wilds. Reason being is so now I can swap out Frey of the Wilds and throw in Wild Surge when I need to. I can do that with ease. It is a 2-cost expenditure. However, that's not that big of a deal, especially when you're going to be able to clear a good amount of stress, especially if you got a bard in the party or just a stamina potion on hand. Just putting that out there now. Rejuvenation Barrier is one that I will hot swap in when I am done with Healing Field, mainly because Healing Field can only be done once per long rest. So once you use it, it's over. Move on to the next one. Keep moving. Keep swapping those babies in. Same goes for some of the other spells. Like maybe I want to bring back in Unleash Chaos when I'm done with using corrosive projectile. I can keep hot swapping stuff in, and especially with 11 stress, you're going to be able to do a lot now. And because let's face it, you're going to have stamina potions on hand. There's no way you're not going to. And so keeping that stress flowing, you're good. That's my tier 4 though. That's my tier 4 in its entirety. I ain't touching on the beast forms because you already got it, man.
That was great. Drew is so good, so much fun. You're probably the only one that could actually hit my character.
Yeah,
you have so much plus.
Could you imagine that if we had an actual melee between these two characters? Honestly, I do think with all those pluses at level 10, I'm always going to hit you at that point. I'm going to make sure of that just with those things.
Yeah, I'd have to like. Now I'm gonna have to go back and look and see if I can make something that could like boost it up temporarily just for like one hit. But yeah, I don't think because evasion obviously is only going to take you so far.
Yeah.
In the normal play, I really wanted to try and find a good balance, and I think as we go into these builds, right, we talk about optimizing, and I think that's what that is. Optimizing is just taking like what you want to do and making that thing as good as possible, right?
Yes.
If I wanted to play this particular character, would I make all the same decisions throughout? Maybe not, because a lot of it's going to depend on your party as well. This is just how far could I push evasion
Yeah.
at the sacrifice of thresholds, right? Because my threshold at this tier 4 is only 21 and 42, which sound like really big numbers, but when you're looking at how much damage an adversary could do, like an adversary could drop 60, 70 damage on you fairly easily at tier 4. So getting
Yeah.
hit does actually hurt this character a lot. It's just I'm trying to prevent that. But this is just kind of me pushing the boundary, so to speak, of evasion. And it's the goal is just to give you a good framework of where you can take this character because obviously with elemental, right, you have three other elements that I could have built around, and in fact the first one I did build around was actually on earth, doing a threshold build instead of evasion, and then I just kind of changed it up about halfway through building it. But that's what I think I love most about druid is the versatility of it. You can swap up on the fly. Like as you're leveling out, you get like halfway through and you're like, "No, I don't really like this." You can start swapping domains as you level, kind of pick out different loadouts, swap to a new element. A lot of fun. This particular druids, I think, need to be paired with the bard because they need that stress clearing. Because
Yes.
you have a lot, but you also use a lot. So
Yeah, can confirm on that one because honestly, like you said, Druid is just so versatile, but the one thing it does not do well is clear stress. It has little moments, but it's not anything worthwhile, and it's generally during downtime in which these things occur. So it's not as good as you want it to be. It's not like Bard level clearing stress. Like, that's insane. But this, high damage output, high maneuverability, and some solid healing. Not the best healing, like I said, not the best healing. I think the Seraph takes the cake on healing. I still stand by my healer that I created back in 1.5. I think that is as good as you can possibly get for healing. But this is a solid second, and let's face it, it's as good as you can get for being able to balance everything like this. I mean, between the damage output and the healing and these different more social and RP encounters, these exploration cards, like you can do so much more than pretty much any other class out there as far as versatility is concerned. So, yeah, I love the Druid a little too much, especially because of those beast forms. That is insane.
how did you feel the the renewal side of it? Would you have done anything different or see a path and how you could play it different? I guess I would say.
So the one way I could, I could foresee playing this differently, outside of like taking Warden of the Elements and then going full on spellcaster and utilizing those elements to create that insane spellcaster, I think I could go a little bit more heavier in the spellcasting and not worry so much about trying to heal and do some of these more exploration type stuff. And a lot of the things I did take were obviously pluses and increases to my ability to hit somebody. So I could have probably lessened that a little bit, especially like not taking Wild Surge or particularly not taking Feint of the Wilds. I could probably do one or the other rather than taking both. But I can see, particularly at level 10, having that need to have those pluses ready to go and just keep smacking them. And especially when you add that in with like experiences you might take, that's the other bit that I think could be improved upon when it comes to these builds is your experiences. If you build your experiences right, that's a guaranteed +2 at the very least on top of whatever else you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. And that might even be better than taking certain increases in your traits. You know, like obviously you want to get your spell trait up there, you want to keep that going. But there are certain experiences that you can take that will increase that even further, not only for your spell casting, but also for other just things that you're lacking in. So you don't have to worry so much about taking those trade increases when you have those experiences to kind of fill the gap. So that's the only way I could see doing this any better. But I mean, I think that's pretty killer right there. So, you know.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we could talk a lot too about experiences because I think, there's a lot that goes into that. But even like when we were first playing Daggerheart and we were testing out, I remember I did a warrior where basically one of my experiences was boosting his attack. So whenever I had the hope despair, and even with this, if I did the element and be like, I could make my character obsessed with fire, right? And then now I'm in my
Yeah.
fire element, I'm trying to cast spells with fires. I could say, hey, my experience, my +2 or +3 experience applies to this. And you can just be burning hope just to give a constant bonus on top of your spellcasting ability. So I 100% agree that experiences like on at first glance kind of just be like, oh, that's cool role playing. But like, if you truly want to get like full 100% optimized, you can start pulling like making experiences crafted toward combat or exploration if you're doing an exploration focused build. So definitely, I know we keep it to kind of like what can we prove on paper and keep it raw, so to speak.
Yeah.
Rules is written, but you can push it so much further if you truly wanted to.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think that's solid for what we can do without having to account for that particular variable. But definitely work on your experiences. You cannot beat having good experiences at the helm as you build this character. So, yeah, hopefully that's fun for you guys. Hopefully that gives you a good outlook for how you can optimize whatever character you're trying to go for, and you can see why we took our picks, how our loadout works out, how our vault works out, and how we're going to be swapping those babies in and out as we go, especially even in combat. So hopefully that takes care of all that for you guys. But if you guys have any questions on this, anything you want to know more, just throw it down in the comments. And we're going to be moving on to Guardian next, so very excited for that. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for us. So until the next one, y'all, keep that shield wall strong.